and you're feeling all alone. Only you to hold your own. No one there to help you. Only there to hold you down. So stop. Don't beat up yourself. 'Cause it's everyone else. So don't look down. Look up around. 'Cause you are better. I can see that when the fire gets started, it takes a lot of tears to wash away. When they come and make you feel downhearted, don't hide away. And now it's feeling like the longest day. It's getting harder to find the will to stay. You gotta find the strength inside of you, so don't hide away. I can see that when the fire gets started, it takes a lot of tears to wash away.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, welcome to another exciting episode of The Battles We All Face. It's actually built on from Bridging the Gap, because we're branching out, folks. We decided, between Joe and I, that things are really growing, things are developing in such ferocity and with so much amazing content that we don't just want to limit it to anybody. So this is something that you can listen to husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, son or daughter, because this is the place, the only place that is designed to bring people closer together, but also to give you some really phenomenal information about what's going on in the world in 2022 with relates to all the different subjects, with mental health, would be finances, as we're going to talk about today, whether it be your homes, whatever it is, and if it's preparing you for the future. We got a stellar packed show today, as always, as we get to grips with the topic of finances, one of the most talked about topics in 2022 right now, because there's so much crazy stuff that is going on. As right at the beginning of the show, folks, we want to remind you that we are not trained financiers. That has got to be put out there, but it doesn't mean that we can't talk about it, because as always, we never teach on anything that we don't have firsthand experience in. So I'm really excited to talk about this today, to really get to grips with this. A lot of the information that we're going to be presenting to you today will be from some of the world's best financiers, investors, their tips, their advices, guys like Robert Kiyosaki, Warren Buffett, Tony Robbins, and many others as well, including Jim Rohn. But before we do any of that, I want to bring in my co-host today. Always lovely, always talented, always full of energy, bubbly, and vibration. Please welcome the awesome Jojo. Jo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, and thank you for my little introduction. Made me feel all special and all warm inside. But no, I'm doing wonderful. Now, forgive me. Sometimes my voice might go a little in and out, but we'll still get the point across.
How's the week going so far, Jo?
Oh my goodness, amazing, absolutely amazing. It's just, when you expect things and you seek them, like we just talked about,
yeah,
you already know that they're going to come back, and it just makes for an amazing experience throughout life. And I know you feel the same way on that, right?
Absolutely. It's like anything, like we were talking about off air. When you get really clear, and this is the whole thing about goal setting, folks, completely different topic, but when you get really clear as to what it is you want to do and who you want to be and what you want to see come into your life, it means that you're no longer running around like a headless chicken, but you actually can really focus as to where you want to be and what you want to do. So that is absolutely fantastic indeed. Are you excited for today's show?
Yes, and I'm over here giggling because you said a headless chicken, but over here we say a chicken with its head cut off.
Yeah.
But it made me giggle.
It's always the funny things.
But I'm always excited about our show. It's one of my most favorite things to do each and every week, and I'm so thankful to always be a part of it with you and to share all this great information to everybody who's listening. So hey, if you haven't hit that like button and share button, go ahead and go do that. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, Jo, we got to begin the show actually, because one of the topics, like we said, that we talk about a lot is finances. And, there's a lot of information that you guys and girls are going to be getting today in this extended edition. So if you do need to watch this in a couple of times or, click and pause on various points of view and then, go back to it, make sure you do. But the first thing that we got to throw out there right now is, this whole concept about money being evil, because for so many years, literally thousands of years, people around the world have been conditioned to believe that money is evil, or that it's the root of all evil. Folks, let me tell you right now, and Joe, obviously, I want you to share your thoughts as well, but to me, money can't be evil. Yes, the expression of money, how it's used, can be used for, terrible evils, as we've seen with people that are buying nuclear warheads and all kinds of other stuff. But the reality is it's an inanimate object. In other words, it is no more evil than this tub of Vaseline or these bonsai wire cutters. It can't be evil. It would be like, fire being evil. It can be used to warm the house, or it can be used to burn the house down. Water, it can be used to cleanse and to give nourishment to your body, or it can be used to drown the person. So it cannot be evil. Money, by my definition, is a transaction for services, products, or information. That's all it is. In the past, it was known as trinkets or beads or livestock or gold or silver, whatever. But that's all it is. Nowadays, it takes its form in paper bills and coins, and in the metaverse and all the crazy stuff that's going on in cyberspace. That's a phrase we haven't used for a while, cyberspace. It's now obviously with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. Joe, what are your thoughts about this?
It's not, I agree. It's obviously not evil. What can turn evil is just like you said. But two, it's sometimes when you're not bringing about the income or the money, or if you just don't have any, it causes you to sometimes make the wrong decisions and do something quote unquote evil that could potentially harm yourself or somebody else.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. And that's, that does come into a lot of what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks in terms of people's mindset as well. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of crazy stuff around the world right now with Ukraine, stuff going on in Canada, stuff going on in Australia, United States. I think actually in the UK, as far as I know, we're the only ones at the moment that doesn't have something crazy going on.
Coming to visit.
You're going to visit. A lot of people keep saying that. They're like, guys, we're going to move to the UK. And I'm like, don't. We've got enough people that are going to be moving in here in the next 10, 15 years as it is. But yeah, it is so true that people do some really crazy stuff in the pursuit of money. And like we said, I think a couple of weeks ago, when people get so fixated on money, that, and in some ways, I wish that people didn't have to bother with money, because I just see, like I said, they're always chasing money. They're never happy with, what they've got or anything like that. And it can become so toxic, and just really, really dangerous for sure.
So let me ask you, John, if you don't mind. Now, for one, you can't chase quote unquote money, or you're never going to be happy, like you said. But what is, I think a lot of people don't realize what the definition is of money. What is that?
As I said, I think, for me, money is a means, an exchange of service. Years ago, it used to be, as I say, with gold trinkets, with bullion, with livestock, all of that kind of stuff. And now it just takes the form in, paper bills, because it's a lot easier to carry around paper bills or a credit card than it is to carry around a sheep.
I wish we could just pay with a smile.
Well, it used to be years ago in certain communities that you would actually pay each other by being of service. So, for example, if you grew grain and I grew corn, I would make cereal and you would make, bread or whatever it was if you were growing flour. Nowadays, obviously, money has become so valued, and it shouldn't be. And we're going to talk about that on today's show as well, why money shouldn't actually be valued, and in terms of the understanding of it. But yeah, it's to me, it's nothing more than a means of exchange for services rendered. The more services that you give and the more of service you can be, the more you're going to make of it. I think that's really as simple as that. The biblical proverb that's there that says, a person should be rewarded very amicably for their service, I think has to be one that, everybody needs to pay attention to, that you do need to make sure the deal is fair. It's all in the law of balance and law of transaction, which if you do work, you get paid. That's always the way that it should. And as we've discussed before, if you're not getting paid for doing the services, folks, then you've really got to step back and say, maybe I shouldn't be doing this with this person, and I should seek, greener pastures.
And that reminds me of something that you said, John, last week to me, and it's been ringing in my head. And we can dive into it right now. We can wait till later, but it was the receive, give, constant rotation.
Yeah.
That you have to do that and be mindful of it.
It's a great it's a great philosophy, and every major religion, I think, in the world will teach about this. Every major philosophy teaches about this as well. Christians will call it the law of tithing, which basically means that every 10th of what you earn is given to God. The Buddhists would turn and say, well, every part of your body is to be in service for somebody else. That is the point of the majority, in fact, if not all spiritual teaching, is to alleviate suffering. So you are giving of yourself that you may receive. And it is, it's the same as finances, because a lot of people, again, they get finances in their hands and all they want to do is keep it, as opposed to, well, I've got finances in my hands, but how can I use what's in my right hand to grow what's in my left hand? And people, again, we've got a really messed up psychology of society, again, because of how they've been conditioned. Money is not taught in school, and it's one of the fundamental things that really must be taught in schools. But yeah, so to answer the question really simply, it's the law of tithing. If you get, you should all receive, because it's not all about well, me. It's also, how can I use what I've got in this hand to help somebody in this hand, even though there's no one in my right hand, just so you know.
I love how you did the hands, because you're supposed to give, for instance, with your left hand without your right hand know what you're doing. So you give without the expectation of receiving anything, but you also don't go around being like, hey, guess what I just did? I just gave this much, I did this, know. And so I love that you did that. I just had to make that statement.
Absolutely. It's again, there's a great story that's in the Bible about, it's called the widow's mite. And, two soldiers basically went in and they were like, guys, look, I'm putting this amount of money in the collection plate. And this woman came in, and gave 2 little coins, and it was all she had in the world. And she didn't say a thing. She just came, she dropped them in. And I think there's a great sense of humility that's there. Because I think, oftentimes when things are going really well, especially in business, you or in life in general, you can become very puffed up. We can believe our own success. We can think, oh, wow, we're amazing, we're incredible, we're all that. And it only takes one thing like that, less than a second, for your entire life to change, So I think it is the fundamental lesson of, when you give, you're doing it humbly, and I think it's so important, because you realize actually how quick life can change, and if you're not doing it humbly, oftentimes, well, why would someone help you humbly? You know what I mean? So it's I think
we could do a whole episode on this alone.
Oh yeah. Oh, yes. So we're just going to skim the surface, I think, today with
I know
with teaching.
So I'm trying to hold back. Oh my goodness, yes. So do that. And, like you just said, sometimes you can give the least, but you're really giving the most because you didn't have that. But you have to give without the concern of, am I going to get it back? Like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. You have to have faith in whatever you believe in, whether it's yourself, whether it's a higher power, it doesn't matter. You have to show that faith and just do it. Like Nike said, to do it.
But it is, again, I think, folks, I'm sorry to kind of dump all over the conditioning and the modern culture, but I look at this and I see this so often now that it's a major problem for so many people that we always want more. Before we came on here, I was making lunch actually, and I turned on YouTube really quickly, and the first thing that popped up was, I think, the most expensive house, and it was like a tour around the most expensive house, and it's in the United States. It's actually in California. and it's $299 million to buy this house. It's basically a hotel. It's got 29, bedrooms and all the different golf courses and all the swimming pools and all this, that, and the other. And we have become conditioned that we've always got to want, we've always got to have more, and it's always got to be big. If we get a really nice house, well, we've got 4-bedroom house, we could do with a 6-bedroom house. And if you buy a 6-bedroom house, you can do with a 10-bedroom house. And it's like, how far can we go and achieve everything? And I don't have a problem with expanding, your mind, but one of the biggest things, and folks, you can look around the majority of celebrities, Mike Tyson, Johnny Depp, Tony Robbins at one point, Jim Rohn at one point, people that make a lot of money and then it all disappears. They lose the houses, they lose the contracts, they lose, there was one guy from the 90s and his name has just jumped. It went in my head and jumped out of my head. It doesn't matter. But he was basically a rap artist. And, it starts out with an advert of him, standing in front of his house being like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Look at me. I'm the big shot now. And the song was Can't Touch This. I can't think who the person was off the top of my head. But everyone now will have that earworm going on.
I got it in my head though.
Yeah. But yeah, and then like 15 minutes later, he's sitting outside bankrupt, can't afford the house, and he's sitting out on the streets. And it was a famous advert that came for an insurance company. And I think it's so important to remember, be thankful for what you actually have. Like at the moment, the wind is blasting out there. I'm thankful that I've got double glazed windows that are safe, secure, and I've got a roof above my head because I've been in the opposite place. I know what it's like to be out there on the streets in that weather and to have nowhere to go. So it's really interesting, again, how people are conditioned, and gratitude, humility, and an awareness of ourselves and actually and what we're doing, I think is fundamental for any, whether it's successful business, whether or not it's just, for you as a person. I think it's absolutely fundamental.
I love how you just said that, because that's so important. I have known individuals that have put their family, that are very wealthy individuals, but have put their family too on such a tight budget that they wouldn't do anything with the being afraid of losing it. But then they lose it for that reason. They attract that because that's what they're thinking. But two, I always say this: you need to humble yourself before God, your higher power, whoever does it for you, because they will.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is, these things don't just happen. There are warning signs. I call them omens. People, there's all these different things out there before you get the proverbial slap in the face or the bulldozer, comes over the top of you. There are always warning signs that it's like, guys, just stop. Stop thinking you're the big deal. And again, when people say that, that what they're doing is going to last forever, 300 billion trillion years from now, all of this will be gone. The graphics that you see behind me, the PCs, the rooms, everything that you see will be gone. You won't even be a memory in the existence of time. So what you're doing right now really isn't that important. But what you're doing for this time and this moment, hopefully with contribution to humanity, hopefully that's important. And that really sets things in perspective.
Absolutely. I love how we always chase some rabbits, so we say down here in the South. We're like, we're going this way, and then ring. But it's also powerful, and that's what we're being told to tell you. That in our hearts, in our minds, that's what we feel like you need to hear right now. And so we hope y'all receive it. If you do, definitely let us know. And if there's something y'all really want to know about, let us know as well, so we can make sure to touch on it, because we're here for y'all 100%.
Absolutely. One of the things actually that we're discovering now, I suppose going forward, obviously, is all of the stuff that's going on in the Ukraine right now. And I know, Joe, I think we touched about this a little bit towards the end of last week's show, which if you haven't seen that, folks, definitely go back and check it out. It is, again, fantastic show. But it's this whole thing about investments now. And it's one of the hardest topics, because people are now realizing that, wait, I can't necessarily become financially free with the job that I've got, because you can only work so many hours. I can only paint so many pictures. Jojo can only interview so many people and do so many different things that are there. but it's figuring out, okay, what is an asset and what isn't an asset? Joe, do you know much about this with assets and liabilities?
Assets and liabilities, not so much in those terms. So I'm just going to say no. I know a lot about certain areas, but determining what is going to harm me, what is going to build me up, that's the way I can resonate with it a little bit better. But I still have issues determining sometimes, having that discernment on what's going to be 100% perfect.
Yeah, and a lot of people do, because when you start talking in financial jargon, especially, which is what we're going to keep bringing it back to today, folks. And again, like Joe said, if you've got comments, if you've got questions, make sure to ask them, because this is an area that people really trip up on and often get taken advantage of. So the simplest way possible, a liability is anything that costs you money. An asset is anything that makes you money. Okay, so for example, your home is not an asset. People buy their home and they do rentals. Try that again. People buy a home to move away from rentals because they think, well, I'm on the property market. It's really, really good. It's good for my finance. It's good for this. All complete fabrication by your banks. Just putting this out there, folks. If you don't believe me, go and listen to guys like Robert Kiyosaki, Wayne Dyer, Warren Buffett, and other people that are there. The reason that your home is not an asset is because it does not make you money. The thing is as well, if you buy high and the market crashes, which it is about to do, this is the thing, it is going to crash probably within the next 2 or 3 years, if not sooner. The house prices will come down. It's a great time for people buying houses. It's not a great time if you are selling houses. So this is information for you guys. The reason it's not an asset is because if you buy high, and the market crashes, which is about to do, you're going to lose a lot of money if you try and sell your house. Plus, the upkeep of a house, as we know, can be really, really expensive. You know, we just put new lawn outside. We just did some refurbishments and some tidy up projects. We do a lot of repurposing stuff in our household because we're kind of traditional that way. We don't go and just buy new stuff for the sake of it. But this is something, folks, that you need to be aware of. So the reason that I say that your home is not an asset and land is not an asset, if you're thinking of investing, is because of this. If you invested, for example, in land and you live in the Ukraine, or you bought a home and you live in the Ukraine, well, your investment is gone because now Russia has taken over for however much longer, we don't know. But at this point, you're essentially without a house. You know, we're seeing this all the time on the media. So if you are going to invest into something, make sure that it is a sustainable investment. It doesn't need to be major stuff. But second of all, make sure you have control over that investment. And thirdly, make sure you understand the investment. So for example, if I'm going to invest in anything, and I'm learning all this as well, but if I'm going to invest in something, folks, I may invest in property. Why? Because I understand property. I may invest in art. Why? Well, because I've got over 2 decades of experience and I should know what works and what doesn't. You know, if I'm going to invest in something else, it's going to be, you know, something that is going to bring about a return every month that I understand, as opposed to investing in Wall Street or in the stock market where I have zero control. When the market crashes, that's how people lose a lot of money. So I know we completely circle around a lot of things there, but that's basically asset and liability, and a little bit on investment that hopefully gets you guys, you know, just thinking a little bit more, because that's ultimately, yes, how you're going to become financially free is not by stocks, but it's going to be by things like buying gold, buying silver. Cryptocurrency is very expensive right now, so I wouldn't recommend starting with that unless you got $36,000 per crypto coin. That's what they cost, folks. Really expensive now. But again, a lot of the specialists do recommend going in for silver, because you can get that for like $15 per bar or whatever it is, per kilo or whatever. So there we go. I'm going to stop talking and give Jill a chance to throw in with her thoughts.
Well, 100%. And what he said cannot argue with. I'll say that. Now, no matter what you go into, do your research.
Yes.
And I want to say you be leery. Now, cryptocurrency is not necessarily a terrible thing to invest in, but you have to be very leery
Yes.
because people are still learning. They're not very knowledgeable in that area, and people is taking advantage of people. And so, and that's not just in that area. So make sure that you do your research thoroughly. You speak with people who can advise you. You take every necessary precautionary step that you can to as we cover your booty, you know, and make sure that you're not going to regret that decision. And again, just like John said, you know, silver, gold, stuff like that, amazing, because no matter what happens, that can be utilized. But you also want to, and I know we're going to touch on this, but you want to have multiple strings of income, residual income. And that's what you want to make sure that you can create for yourself in some way, shape, or form. And like I said, we're going to touch on that in just a second. So I don't want to just, but I just had to throw that in there with that.
But it's true. And to give you an idea, folks, you know, I know we're presenting this information to you, and it may be the first time that you've ever heard of this. This is why I'm throwing out specific names as well, so you can go and listen to these people. To give you an indication, I've been studying this now for nearly 3 years before I'm looking at making any move, because again, I want to understand what's going on, the call outside, basically in the business world, the marketplace. I want to know what's going on with homes, with property. I want to know, is it going to drop massively? How high, how far, how wide? You know, and I want to make sure, like Joe said, you do your research. This is not something that if you're struggling for money, you're just going to jump into and do like that. A lot of people try doing that. That's how they lose their money. If you're investing in the stock market, you can't lose your money unless you sell. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother time. And if you are interested in that, I would encourage listening to people like Tony Robbins, who specializes in that area. But for me personally, I wouldn't touch it. But as Joe rightly said, no matter what happens with finances and with money, silver and gold are always going to, they call them God's money because they've been here right from the dawn of time. They'll be here long after we're gone, folks, and you will always be able to trade with them.
Yes, and I just want to, I want to make sure that we keep everything very simple, because I want, even if a kid, you know, my 10-year-old's listening. Of course, she knows sometimes more than I do in this area, but it can all be retained and resonated with. Now, whenever I started doing insurance, back when I did, they told me I was going to be able to bring in a residual income. I did not know what the term residual meant. So just in case y'all don't know, residual is going to be a recurring thing. Now, sometimes it builds off of what you've already done, but no matter what, it's going to be a recurring monthly, annually, so on and so forth thing that you really don't have to put a lot of attention and effort towards after you've done it initially. I just wanted to make that clear.
No, and I think that's really important as well. Again, residual income, that falls into your asset column. So for folks, if you want a clear idea, almost like a little bit of homework before we move on, if you want a really clear idea as to where you are financially, what's going on, and a lot of people get scared to death at this point. Me personally, I would rather know where I am financially. I'd rather know if a bowling ball is going to hit me in the face as opposed to being surprised. You know what I mean? If the market's going to crash, I want to know where I'm at. So what I would suggest that you do, get a piece of paper and draw yourself a table, almost like a cross. And on one side, write down assets. On one side, write down liabilities. And the liabilities are going to be things like your bills, your home insurance, your mortgage, your car, your internet, food, you know, groceries, all that kind of stuff, utilities. Your assets are going to be the money that's coming in. If you're watching this, you know, and you're working a normal job, do I say, it's going to be, you know, your wages. If you've got pensions, you may have money coming in from there. If you've got bonds these days, you may have a little residual income coming in, probably not as much. And the same with investments. Again, only you will know that based on the terms of your policy. But again, like Joe said, we want to keep it really, really simple. So you want to make sure that you've got, you know, your assets and you know where money's going to come from. And there's literally hundreds of thousands of ways now to build up residual income, especially with Amazon, eBay, you know, you name it. And it's not that difficult once you actually begin building this stuff up.
Yes. And You're exactly right. It's not that difficult. And there's so many different ways, as you said. Now, John touched on something last week that I want to go ahead and just put it out there because it caught my attention and it made me go, oh, snap. Because there's no worse feeling thinking, I don't have this. Or what if this happens? I won't be able to do this. So John mentioned that he and his wife, if something were to happen, they're okay for at least the next 2 years. That needs to be your minimum. If you cannot live comfortably for the next 2 years, that issue needs to be addressed first, and you need to find different ways to approach it. And we're going to cover those different ways that you can build that income, save it, and different methods of saving it as well. But I do want to challenge you, if you're at the 2-year mark, if you're at the 5 or the 10, take it a step further. Never become complacent, even with saving money.
You know, the crazy thing though, Joe, actually, it's estimated that most people are only 6 weeks away from bankruptcy.
You want me to tell you? So now John and I had this talk last from bankruptcy. Oh gosh. The income or the income difference from the top 5% between the UK and the US is crazy different. A good $200,000 difference.
Like that, yeah. Yeah.
Which that was mind blowing in itself to me. My goodness, and I was going somewhere with that, and it just bing. It'll come back to me. But yes, the income difference. So you always have to keep that in consideration. But most people in the US, that's where I was going, is literally only living check to check, week to week. And if they miss one day or half a day of work, that has put them in a bind in some way, shape, or form.
The crazy thing is, the more I research and the more I listen and work with folks in the United States, you guys are almost working the same way that we were back in the Victorian era. So for example, if you're with a company or an organization and you get sick, well, you get sickness pay. A lot of companies in the States, unless it's by that specific company, you don't get anything. Basically, if you don't work, you don't earn. It really is as simple as that. And if you're a bit confused as to what we're talking about here, folks, so the percentage-wise in UK, if you earn £30,000 and above, you are in the top 5% of basically the earning spree. If you earn £150,000 or above, you're in the top 1%. Okay, so most people in the UK are earning under £30,000. Okay, flip that over to the United States. If you're in the United States, it's a lot higher, folks, because obviously of your healthcare, of all manner of insurances and things that you got over there. That is in crazy high supply right now. And you've got to be, again, as I think we talked about last week, a friend of mine in New York City, in central New York, had said if she doesn't make $150,000 per year, she can't live. To me, 150 grand per year, and you can't live on that, there's something seriously wrong. And a lot of that is coming from the government. A lot of that's obviously how much you're taxed, and a lot of other stuff that's there. It's interesting there, folks, for sure.
It's ridiculous. And now in the top 5% in the US, I just had to look it up because I couldn't quite remember that number, but it's right above $310,000.
Wow.
And then the 1% is $900,000.
That is insane.
Right. It is insane. And then you think, now you'll often hear too, the top 1% controls everything. That's a common statement that you'll hear here in the US, especially. And they do. They do. And they do. It is a true statement. It's said for a reason. Now, do you have to reach 1% to be happy? Do you have to reach 5% to be happy? No, because it's all about what you have in your heart that you want to acquire and the goals that you want to reach. So we're not seeking the money. We're seeking what the money can bring to our lives and to our families' lives. And you definitely want to make that distinction to your children as well. And if both you and your significant other does not look at your bills and money together, change that today.
Yeah.
You both need to be hands-on, involved, and know what's going on at all times. That is extremely important.
Absolutely. And it is so fundamentally important as well that, as Joe said, you don't get caught up in the money rat race game. Yes, I understand, you know, you need money to pay your bills. You need your money to live. But believe it or not, it doesn't actually cost that much when you break things down. You know, there was a story about a family, I don't know if it was a family in America, family in the UK that managed to live on £1 a day, and they paid off £45,000 worth of debt. How they did it, I don't know. I haven't seen the full article. Katie my wife was the one that reported that to me today. And I was like, but I've heard of other people doing this. I know when I was in my dire straits situation, I was living on about £20 a week, sometimes every 2 weeks for food. You know, and I know what it's like to really, you know, again, live hand to mouth. But when you realize sometimes you actually maybe have expectations of your money more than what you're actually bringing in, you need to look at downgrading, you need to look at downsizing and simplifying your life. There's a lot of people now that are doing this with small homes or tiny homes, as they're called, you know, and a lot of, I mean, heck, I see the appeal to it, because when you can live for $2,000 a year, and not have to work and not have the stress and a lot of other things, that's a whole different topic as regards to stress. You know, it's a big thing. But yeah, you either make more money, you learn how to sell more, or you figure out how to simplify your life. But as Joe said, you need to look at this together as a family.
I want to even challenge even more. Why don't you do all three?
Yeah.
Of what he just said, do all three. But to anybody that didn't know, because I don't know, £1 in US dollars is $1.31. So John used to live on a week. Basically, we're just going to say off of $25.
Yeah.
Here in the US, $25, you cannot even go to the gas station and get a soda and a half a tank of gas, you know, or something like that. So that's mind-blowing.
Well, it's true, because the thing is now, I believe, to fill up your car in the US, I was hearing this the other day, I need to check the location, but I think it's about $150 to fill up your car, which is insane.
Right. Well, you know, I took a road trip this weekend to go handle a little business, and everything, of course, now always remember, whatever goes on in the world dictates stuff like this, gas prices, your home, all that wonderfulness, which I know y'all know. But usually to fill up my little mommy car, my little SUV that I have, it's no more than $40. I had to fill up 3 times to get to my destination. Wow. And it was anywhere between $75 and $95, because I live in a cheaper state, we'll put it that way. So as I progressed to my destination, the gas prices just rose and rose, and they're almost triple what they are here in some places in the US.
I think it's like $7 a gallon. I think is the latest that I'd heard for you guys. It's this, and it's the same over here when you equate it. I think it's about £4. You know, so everything's going up. But I want to bring this all back together, because, you know, it's really interesting. We're talking about inflation. Everything's going up, folks, except for the amount of interest that you get on your money. Have you now why would this be? This is the really bizarre thing. Everything's going up except people's wages, except, I mean, prices in terms of business are going up and everything. That always gets put on the consumer. It's the consumer that's going to suffer. But we were looking at IVAs, which is a savings account here in the UK, no, so in the US, in the UK, that you can take out, and you used to get really great returns on investment. Every single year you get a really good annual return. Now, again, the interest rates are not that good. So I actually have a thing at the moment where I really caution people about leaving their money in banks, leaving it in savings accounts, leaving it in all these other places. And the reason being is because over here in the UK, now, know how I said that nothing had happened? Nothing's happened recently, but about less than a decade ago, people who were working in the banks, as in the higher ups and everything, they were taking people's money, investing it illegally, putting it on the stocks and shares illegally, and then lost it illegally. And did the people get their money back? No, they didn't. The same thing happened for what we call a chain, a business chain over here in the US. You'd call it a corporate company called Poundland, where the folks at the top were basically skimming off the top of people's pensions. Here's the really crazy thing. Here in the UK, they did it all over the world, apparently. But here in the UK, they were not held to account. The people didn't get their money back. And basically, and this is a common practice within business, all they did was to close down the business and to release all, I don't know, 10,000 employees so as they didn't face time and charges and all the other stuff. Because once the business is gone, legally, if it's called Pound World, you can replace it with Poundland. If it's called Poundland, you can replace it with Pound Buster or Pound Stretcher, and these are names of reputable, brands that have been out for years. But I find it really interesting how, you used to put your money in banks and it used to be really, really safe. In the US, you guys aren't actually any better, because what can happen is, and this actually happened at the turn of the 1900s, the banks came out, people had their money in there, and there was a major crash. People wanted to get their money out, and the banks actually turned around and said, no, we are not prepared to give you your money, but we will give you an allowance. So at that point, you start to think, how safe is my money? Further points of this, just to obviously put this information out there, folks. Historically, don't invest in currency, don't invest in pounds, don't invest in dollars or anything like that. Why? Because historically, all currency goes to zero. This is what happened after World War I with the German Deutschmarks. After World War I, they weren't worth anything. You could take 50 million Deutschmarks and you couldn't even get a loaf of bread. So be very, very careful on how you kind of use your money, how you invest your money, what you put it into. And this is why we always say you got to do your own research, you got to do your own understanding, because nobody is going to do it for you. And if they do, as Joe said, they are going to be looking to take money from you, And in some ways, you guys, just to wrap this section up, almost have been lied to and conditioned. People don't teach you how to be an entrepreneur or how to build a business or do all this other stuff. They teach you, go to school, get a job, get out of debt, get into a pension, retire, die. That's your life. And rather than saying, well, how can I be an entrepreneur? How can I actually, as Joe said, build up my own residual income streams? So this hopefully will help you guys. And the final thing I'm supposed to say is, until you sort the root of the problem, don't get credit cards. Don't even think about getting credit cards. That's a topic we'll talk about, I'm sure, later on in the show. But credit cards can be the death nail for so many families, for sure.
Right, 100%. And I'm so glad you mentioned what you said a second ago, because it brings what we were saying earlier all around to full circle. So for y'all that don't know what happened here in the US in 1929, it's called the Great Depression. The stock market crashed. They lost millions of investors. And over the course of the next few years, all the industrial companies and everything just went down. People got laid off. They couldn't pull out the money. The banks kept everything to themselves. So what people did is they had to trade services, and then they traded gold and silver because it did not lose its value. Did they struggle? Yes. My grandmother tells me about that time all the time. Not a fun time. People struggled so badly. But what I always want you to remember on my point on this is, do we want to invest our money in the stock market to where it can crash? Because just like on the last episode, we said, history always repeats itself.
Yeah.
And be mindful. If we know that it's going to happen, we need to take the proper steps to make sure that it doesn't happen and affect us.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Well, just touching on that, Joe, actually, and it's a very quick thing I just want to say. Do you know the reason the majority of the time that the stock market crashes? Are you aware of this?
I believe a lot of it's just panic by a worldly event, but I could be wrong. That's my assumption and what I've observed.
What it's turned out to be is actually computer-generated algorithm programs. Now, there's a mouthful for you. Basically, it's folks on computers around the world that if they buy, everything's good. When they want to see something happen, so for example, oil in Russia, if they hit sell and they all hit sell at the same time, well, the stock market, they call that the bottom falling out of the stock market or the stock exchange. The bottom falls out, everything freezes, the stock market crashes. What we're talking about as a crash is the computer programs that are actually crashing the system. So because of these programs that are there, this is the reason for so many stock market crashes. Obviously, you know, with the case that Joe had referenced in 1929, computers weren't even in their infancy. There were a lot of other issues and a lot of other things regarding that. But it's basically the same thing. It's just a different platform now. Now people are using computers, whereas before they were using all manner of different things. And it just goes round and round.
Exactly. Round and round makes a full circle. And that means it repeats itself, just in a different form. Now, I want to touch on the credit card thing that you said. Don't do it. Now, the only reason that you should get a credit card, in my opinion, is if you want to keep it set aside only for emergencies, but if also you want to build up your credit. And if you're going to do that, you need to just make a few purchases. I always did it with my gas, and I paid it off immediately. Almost the same day, I would go pay it off. And so never spend anything on your credit card that you do not have already to cover it. You need a credit card is a tool to get you to a destination down the road. It's not to go get what you want before you have the means to get it. Very important. I had to learn that at an early age as well. And we
a lot of people do.
Yes, and we need to teach our children this and ourselves this if we don't know it, but don't do that. But your credit score is so important to maintain at a high level, or if it's not, there's steps you can take to get it there. It takes a little time, but you need to focus your time and energy on that because that will benefit you so much down the road. And you never know when you're going to need to have it checked and utilize it for some reason.
It's an important thing to remember, folks, that the bank will always protect the bank's money, and they're great at giving out credit cards. Equally, they're great at, you know, home repossession. They're great at, you know, possessing all your properties and all your assets and everything there, because they will always protect themselves. When you are using a credit card, you're using the bank's money. A lot of people can use it in business to get rich, but again, you have to be really, really careful with this. Do your research, obviously, that's there. You know, but that is the reality. The bank will always protect the bank's own money. And a lot of people, especially nowadays, as Joe said, in the US and even in the UK, they're living paycheck to paycheck, you know, hand to mouth. You know, and the reality is that they're taking out a credit card and then getting in debt majorly, and then they take out another credit card to pay off that credit card, and then they remortgage their home to pay for that credit card, and then they take out another credit card to pay for that, and it just goes round and round and round, and they will never be debt free. The credit score system was something that was created. I don't know how I feel about it because it still feels like Big Brother at times, but it was created for the banks to have a way to say, right, who is a secure investment? If you come and buy a house, for example, you know, is this person financially secure that they're going to be able to pay it back? Because again, the bank will always protect itself.
Exactly. That could not have been said any more clearer and perfect than that right there, because that is highly important. Now, I do want to stress too, you get to a point you can't pull out any more credit cards, right. And you get to a point that you can't go, you know, remortgage your house because they've taken it, and then you can't go get an apartment or rent a home because your credit's already shot because you did that. So each action always leads to either a good or a bad. So it could be good, could be bad, kind of like the old wise tale. And so you need to stop and you need to say, okay, what is this going to lead to? And make sure you think every action through, especially when it comes to your finances, because of course it not only impacts you, but it impacts everybody around you, like your family, so on and so forth.
Definitely. And the whole thing, you know, with a credit card, it comes, you know, back more central than, you know, long before you even get a credit card. It comes back to you. Again, why do you want a credit card? So that's why we say, you know, until you get you sorted out, and you do, and again, like we said before, it does not take a long time to do this. If you are struggling, we can help you. There is a lot of help out there, and again, it's real practical help that isn't going to keep you, you know, dangling on the stick for ages in coaching sessions and things. But it is really important because, again, so many people have been conditioned. It's what we call magpie syndrome or the monkey mind, where literally you see something nice, you want to buy it. You see something else nice, you want to buy it. You see something else nice, you want to buy it. This is how, the consumer mind works. And again, it's something that you got to ask yourself. I always ask myself now, and I have done this, in fact, for many, many years, do I actually need it? And if I don't need it, I don't buy it. Because it just takes up stuff. It takes up room, clutter, and you get the point. It's like, do I really need this?
How many times have you gotten something like that too, and you never touched it?
Oh yeah. I mean, for Christmas, that's one of the things. Because I come from a family now that loves to buy things at Christmas. Because I have a mother-in-law that loves to see people open their presents. It's almost like her birthday. It's like birthday and Christmas all come into one, and I'm just like, okay. But yeah,
that's her Christmas gift.
That's it. It's like watching people open Christmas presents. But the amount of times, again, I've said that to people. It's like, look, don't buy XYZ because I don't really need anything. I'm really hard to shop for because I just look around and I'm like, I don't need anything else. I've got everything I want, and anything that I do want, I can go and buy. But that's, again, like we say, where the issues come from. And then people spend the next 6 months paying off Christmas, and then they spend the next 6 months complaining about it, and then they get back to Christmas again, and the whole circle starts again because history repeats itself.
And that was my parents completely. They would put themselves into debt for, I wouldn't even say 6 months, the next year, trying to spoil my brother and I. And we didn't need that. Did we love it? Of course. Yeah. But we didn't need that. And, y'all, I've seen so many people, and real quick side note, get stressed out during that time of year because they can't do this. That's something that y'all have been trained to think that you have to do. Yeah. Sometimes, and usually all the time, the most powerful gift that you can give somebody is something that you have spent time, you have thought about, and it could just be a little note on a card telling them how you feel about them, what they do to make your life better, so on and so forth,
It can be, the other thing, folks, I know it's not Christmas, but again, because people don't tend to notice, what's been bought or what they've actually got in the house, play games and literally go around the house, pick up 15 things and wrap them. And your folks will come in and they're, oh, wow, this is amazing. And they'll think it's actually a new present. It's not. It's actually been in the house for 15, 20 years. That's never been looked at. That's never been done. That's never been played with or whatever. And sometimes it can bring back old memories, which is even more fun. But yeah, I think, the whole consumer mindset now, and obviously I'm saying this as someone that's in business, but it really has gone, insane, I think, in a lot of ways.
I agree completely. So I know we're just feeding y'all the brains full of all kinds of stuff. And, we did say this would be an extended thing, but John, where do you want to go from here? Because I know we have so much that we want to, I'm kind of at the bits.
Well, I think actually the place that we need to go next is to a commercial break. And to tell you guys that if you are struggling with your website right now or with your business, you can get in touch with us at thebattlesweallface.com. We can help you. Websites can be the hardest things, not only to create, but also to get right. And what you tend to find is people put a lot of money into their websites and they think, wow, this is great. Woo, go me. But then the real work starts in generating traffic, getting people going to their websites. And if your website ain't paying for itself, then your website ain't working. Oftentimes your website as well can just need a few tweaks here and there in how you're presenting yourself. Remember, your website is there to tell your customers and viewers that you can solve their problem. If a person comes to you with a leak in their bathroom, for example, and there's water pouring down through their kitchen, they're not wanting to know when you were established or who you are or what inspired you. They want to know, can you fix my problem? And if you are struggling with getting your story right and engaging your clients, we can help you. As I said, head to thebattlesweallface.com. There's a business section there right now. It's all been refurbished, renewed. It looks absolutely fantastic, folks. And we can help you get your website back on track and running. And if you're starting a business, we can help you obviously learn the right way to build a business. So with that in mind, head to thebattlesweallface.com and book in a free, no obligation consultation. And we look forward to hearing from you. So from there, Joe, I think actually do you have something that's leaping out at you that you think,
Dude,
yeah,
you know, I'm over here sitting here chipping up to bits. So for one, definitely, even if you don't think you need help, go to that website and let's just talk. Like you said, it's free. But hit that like button, hit that share button, and I do it 2 more times.
Absolutely.
And yes, we thank you so much because so many people need to hear this. And you know, I hope it resonates with everybody. But even if it doesn't resonate with you, you never know how someone else will receive it.
Yeah.
So we can't dive into each and every one of them because there is so many, and I only know about in the US. Okay, and so the ways of acquiring multiple streams of income first. Now, a successful person, I've always been trained, needs to have at least 6 to 7 different streams of income to be comfortable.
Yes.
And I use the word comfortable loosely. But you have your residual income. So that's going to be the recurring. Now you have ones like building compound interest. Now, those with compound interest, it's best to do when you're in, I would say, under the age of 45 and younger, because it has the time to build up. Because what you're doing is you're setting this amount in there, and you might be adding to it every once in a while, but it's just sitting there building.
Yeah.
It's building. And then down the road, then you go get it. Now, a lot of you have 401ks with your job, so on and so forth. If you withdraw from them early, which is going to be before the age of 60 or 65, you are going to be penalized no less than 9% of that amount. Now, usually with 401ks, your company will pay a certain percentage, and then you will pay a certain percentage, and it'll add up there. Be careful. But in your younger years, because 401ks are invested into the stock, so they can build and build off of what y'all added on. In your younger years, you can be more aggressive with it, because if you lose it, you have time to replenish it. But if you are 50, 60, 70 years old, don't you dare be aggressive, because if it bites you in the booty, you cannot, unless just by the grace of the whoever, I say God, divine spirit, whatever, says, okay, I'm going to give this back to you because you were not responsible with it. And some people work their entire lives to build this up. Pensions, same thing. IRAs, same thing. And I'm assuming IVAs, same thing. But the only difference, I'm not sure, John, on IRAs too, nothing in the US can you withdraw or get that back without being penalized and paying for it.
Yeah. So what we're actually finding as well, and obviously we'll break everything down for you guys and make it really simple, so you can write this stuff down, because this is really, really important, and we'll talk about different buckets momentarily. But with the crazy thing that I observe with particularly stuff in fact, both the US and the UK, is that when you withdraw from a 401k or your pension over here, you're actually taxed on money that you've already been taxed on. So you got to bear this in mind, folks. In my opinion, 401ks, pensions are not a good investment. They're really not. And I know a lot of people will tell you that they are. And again, that's how people have been conditioned. You know, again, you get a job, you invest, you get a pension, all of this kind of stuff. But they are dangerous, because at the end of the day, all you're doing is making, you know, the government more money. And if you don't believe me, when you actually break down your paycheck in the US, you are paying from January through April just to the government. Everything that you earn, that amount of money is how much goes to the government at the end of the year, which I believe actually for you guys is April for your tax year. Over for us, it's January is the deadline. So when you're beginning to look at your money and your finances, my personal thing is I would not look at a pension. We don't have a pension. I would rather just put money into my bank account every single month and let it build up, because a pension for us over here, I've known people that invested in pensions for 40, 50, 60 years and ended up with no more than £2,000 a year or a month, sorry, you know, as a result. You know, so you start thinking, is this really where I want to go? Is it going to be great financially for you in the future? Personally, I don't think so, but I've got different tips for you and different ideas. Joe, have you got any more that you want to contribute to that?
Of course, you know me. So of course, you've heard the saying, there's two things guaranteed in life, and that's going to be death and taxes. And that's true. So if we know that our kids are always going to have to pay taxes, that we need to teach them early. So when they get an allowance, my daughter has to pay tax on it.
Mhm.
Same thing. She's got a tithe on it or donate to a charity, whatever. So I just wanted to add that in there. Make sure you instill that in your children early so they don't get hit with it and blindsided and then have to learn it later on. As far as the pensions, 401k and all of that, I completely agree. Don't do it, because there's ways to create, and the residual income is the most important in my opinion. And the bucket method, jar method that we're going to cover in a minute, to save it and to make sure it's all being delegated in the right ways. But there, if you've never read the 4 agreements, go do so, because it talks about the movie and the box that we all keep ourselves in. So if you can help yourself to step outside that box and see the ways that you can create that residual income without having to pay penalties when you withdraw it, so on and so forth, that is going to be, again, in my opinion, the best way to secure you and your family's future, especially when you get 6, 7, 8 of them. Then you're also freeing your time because you're not having to just put everything into it always.
Yeah, and that's Don Miguel, I believe, the 4 agreements.
Miguel Ruiz, yes.
That's the one, yes. But yes, phenomenal book. A lot of there for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the different buckets. You know, I know some people talk about 6 buckets, people talk about 3 buckets. I personally work with 3 because it's simple. So again, if you've got a piece of paper, turn it on its side and just draw 3 columns. And Joe, I know you've got your own ideas, so I'll throw this out, folks, and then Joe will take over. So what you want, and this is for investment, okay? Now, specifically for investment. So your first one is your security bucket, okay? Now, in there, you're going to have things like savings account. You're going to have things like your bonds. So here in the UK, we have post office bonds. They're not going to bring about a great amount of return, but it's safe. You're not going to lose your money. And at any point, unless a term is obviously specified in the contract, you can get it out at any point you want. But you're going to have some form of residual income that's coming every single year. Your second one is your growth bucket. And this is where you can look at putting a percentage of your monthly income into, as Joe rightly said, compound interest. Now, it might not sound like a lot, but if you begin with, $20, $25 and you're doing that monthly, well, it mounts up quite quickly. Initially, it doesn't seem like it's doing a whole lot. And Tony Robbins breaks this down as well. You can check him out on YouTube, Tony Robbins compound interest. And I don't have the facts and figures in front of me, but by, I think it's like year 6 or 7, you go from a couple of $100s, couple of $1,000 to $8,000, and then it goes to 16 grand, then it goes to 32,000 and 64, and so on and so on and so on, $128,000. And it builds up very, very quickly. The power of compound interest, you do not touch this money until you're ready to retire. And again, like Joe said, you want to ideally do it when you're young. You got to learn how to do it as well. This is something that we're getting into. I first discovered this when I was 17 years old, but it was not in the right place to do this, so I thought. But actually, when you break it down, even today, you can actually get into this fairly simply. And again, there are coaches out there that can teach you this. We are not those people that can teach you how to do this, but there are people out there. As I said, Tony Robbins and his organization is phenomenal in doing this. And, they will help you get into this. Compound interest is a really, really big thing. But, you can often do this for 20 or 30 years and end up with several hundreds of thousands of dollars, pounds, yen, quattro, whatever currency you're in. And then the final bucket that you've got is your dream bucket. So sometimes you're going to take a little bit of money out for your compound interest that you say, okay, right, I've earned $100,000. I want to buy that, Kawasaki, Yamaha, motorbike, whatever you want. Or I want to buy, the latest car or whatever it is for $100,000 these days. Probably not going to get that much. But you'll certainly get a really nice, car and everything there. Or, for a new house, whatever, renovations. That is your dream bucket. Some people dream about buying an island, buying a boat. whatever, trip around the world. Those are your 3 fundamental buckets. And each one has to be, secure. So if you are, as Joe said, a little bit younger, you might want to take your $1,000, $2,000 or pounds monthly income and break it down. You might say, well, I want 50% to go into my security bucket. You might say, I want 15, 20% to go into my, risk bucket. And then you might want the remainder to go into your dream bucket. Okay, so you're saving up for these different things, and you don't buy anything from your dream bucket until you've got the money in there to do so. Okay, patience, can be a virtue. And you build it up, and it means then that you are constantly, you're actually doing this and you're staying safe. If you lose the money from your growth bucket, it's okay, because you are secure in your security bucket. I can't stress that enough. And I think I've covered all I need to in this one. Any questions or any thoughts on that?
That's a great method, and that's going to resonate so well with so many people. I want to be clear, just because you are above the age for what we said does not mean there is no way to reach your goals. Yeah. If just start. The first key is to start, and don't put limits on yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm this age, so I can never do this. You're right, you can't, because you just made that statement. So change your way of thinking, because that's so important. But 2, if you've lost something, I used to have a client that he has made and lost many $1 million over and over again. And so it happened again. And I said, oh my goodness, are you okay? And he was like, yeah, I've done it twice. I mean, why can't I do it again? Now all I got to do is not lose it the next time. So if that does happen, just make sure you learn from your mistakes on that, or, it might not even been your mistake, but just know that you've done it once, you can do it again. Now, my method that resonates well with me, because John is better with the general knowing. I am a person that has to be more strict upon myself. So if you're that person, this might be the method more for you, because it's going to list it out, but you have to discipline yourself. And I am one of those people that can go spend money at the drop of a hat. And that's not good. That's not securing my future. So from T. Harvey Aker, The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind, it's a 6-jar system. You can either do the jars in your mind, or I literally had the jars at one point in time. I'm not exaggerating. So your first jar is going to be for your rent, your food, stuff like that. Any type of bills that you might have. That generally, he recommends put 55% of your income aside. The next one is going to be your long-term savings. Okay, so big purchases down the road, just like John said, them dreams, vacations, stuff like that. That's 10% is recommended. You can change the percentages, whatever you feel like, but this is what he recommends and what many people use. Of course, if they change it, it's not like they call me up and tell me. Now, the third jar is going to be for play. So do you want to go out and take your kid roller skating? Do you want to go do this? Do you want to go get a massage? You're going to set 10% aside for that. Then in your fourth jar, because we should always invest in ourselves, that is the most important investment that you'll ever do. 10% goes to coaching, books, mentoring, stuff like that. 10% in the fifth jar is going to go to real estate, whatever type of investment that you want to build on. We'll put it that way, because I started to say it and then I was like, we'll just say long-term investments that benefit you down the road. So the sixth jar, and again, this actually might be the most important jar, is going to be 5%. I actually do 10 to 15 personally, is going to be your giving, whether it's tithes, whether it's donations to charity, however you feel in your heart that you need to give back. That is that jar. And again, I can't stress that enough. That's one of your most valuable jars that you can have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
sorry.
if you're not writing this down, Please do, because you're not going to remember.
The thing is, folks, at this point, you know, a lot of this may go over your head, and that's okay. You know, you need to, you know, break it down and listen to it in ways that, you know, you're going to get. But to give you an idea, I've just done the calculation. Had I started when I was 17 years old, and I just rounded the figure up for 20 years. So I'm putting down, okay, you have an initial balance of £10,000, okay? Your interest rate is 6% yearly. That means that's what you're going to receive, and you do it over 20 years, okay? Putting away £250 per month after 20 years, I would have a grand total of £149,189.82. And I would have gained total interest nearly £80,000 in doing this. Okay, so basically I have put down £10,000 and I have made a lot. Simple as that. I've basically made £140,000 for doing very little, as opposed to just, you know, apart from leaving it in an account. It's as simple as that. And when you begin to do this and you find the accounts that you can do this with, you know, you actually start wanting to invest more. And, you know, I know Robert Kiyosaki and his wife, Kim, you know, they live on 20% of their income. You know, if you break it down, most people can live on 20% of their income. You know, again, and I love doing the figures when you actually see it, and it's like, wow, you know, this is really exciting to see. You know, if now we were to put down like 50,000, and I'm just interested in the figure, and then you pay, you know, £250. Okay, so after 20 years, we would have made £281,589 and gained nearly £172,000 in interest, because it compounds all the time. So this can make you, you know, very, very wealthy for doing very, very little. And it's making your paycheck go a lot further, because I can tell you now, folks, you do not want to rely on pensions. You don't want to rely on 401ks, because at the end of the day, I genuinely don't believe within the next 5 or 10 years they're going to be around. I genuinely don't. Based on what's happened, the world, the economy of the world cannot afford to keep going in the way that it is.
Right. And I mean, and it's a known fact, like everybody in the US has to donate to like Social Security, Medicaid stuff, even though we don't use it and you can't access it till a certain age. It's a known fact it's not going to be there by the time I get there, but I still have to invest into it. But I'm not going to jail because I didn't. I'm going to do it. But you just have to be mindful that that security blanket that they say that you have is not going to be there.
No. So the other things that you want to look at as well, you know, again, like Joe was saying, is residual income. Residual income can come from a lot of places. As we said, compound interest, that can be a really big one. But you don't need to stop there. You can also make residual income on Amazon, you know, by, you know, a lot of different things. And this is something, an area that we're looking at going to. You can become an Amazon seller, and it costs I think it's £30 a month to do. So about $50 a month to do. Find different people that are basically wholesalers in China, Japan, Australia, across the world. And you can actually buy their products in bulk, make sure that they are really popular products, and then you can list them onto your Amazon account. You can be dropping them into Amazon, so they will actually go to the Amazon warehouse. You don't need to touch them. And literally, you can just receive the income from them. Other ways of making residual income are obviously things like either side of me, which is over here, is from books. If you love to write, you know, everything's back to front. Joe's laughing. Everything's back to front here. So my left is my right, and my right is who knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of, you know, building up assets, folks, things like books. Basically, if you are going to be, or if you're in the world of entrepreneurship and all these different areas, you want to ideally create products that you create once and you get paid on forever. That's why courses have become such a big thing now. That is why mentoring has become such a big thing in subscriptions. That is why books and audiobooks are such big things right now. These are ways to make money. I do it with my art courses. I do it with my books. You can get the book, obviously, The Battles We'll Face, on Amazon. There's all sorts of different ways. All you need to do is that little bit of research that, Google it, throw it into your Google machine and say, how do I make residual income? And you will get a whole list of things and pick out the ones that you understand.
Oh my goodness. So Amazon's the modern day, like for instance, eBay, because you don't have to touch it. And that is huge. You don't have to make that trip. You don't have to package it, blah, blah, blah. That is awesome. I want to touch on a little bit too, the subscriptions, because how many of y'all have paid or have about 10 or 12 subscriptions going on your phone right now that you forgot about? And so I want y'all to be always mindful of these things that you say, oh, I'll do it, and it won't charge me for like a month, but the fee is so low. Yeah. If you're not paying attention like you and your family should be doing, you don't realize it comes out, and that could go on for years. I'm not even gonna lie, y'all. I purchased something for my daughter one time. We never even used it, but I paid for it literally 6 years till I realized I was doing it. And so always be mindful of that. But John's right. There's so many ways to create that residual income. And that was the selling point to get me to even start doing insurance. And I still make a residual income off of those clients to this day. And it's been a few years, but I get it till I die. If I still have paying clients, this is just an example. After I pass away, that gets passed on to my daughter. But my favorite way of residual income is proper collaboration. So where you see a need that you can fulfill easily and one time, or here and there, but it doesn't take up much of your time for somebody, but then it gives you a monthly commission residual income, or just a monthly set residual income. That's my favorite, just because I feel like but it's the same way. You can have multiple of those. You can't have too many residual incomes. I want to make that very, very clear. You can have an unlimited amount, but keeping track of it is proper. When you get to a certain point, then you need to start doing your taxes every 3 months rather than once a year. And we can always touch on that later, but that is very important to make sure you have a professional or two that can keep track of it properly, so you never get in a bind that you weren't aware of.
Yeah. And I think, I know this, again, like we said, is a lot of information to take in, folks. That's why we said break it down into small parts for yourself. But a lot of people at this time are thinking, my goodness, the world is about to end. It's all terrible and everything else. This is a time, again, of opportunity for everybody. Yes, businesses are going to change. Our businesses change. You've got to be willing to diversify. You've got to be willing to, you got to be willing basically to shift. Everything is always in transition. It doesn't matter where you are, what you do, but it is an opportunity for certain to, hopefully be more valuable to the marketplace. And also it means that you grow and develop as well.
Right. And like we said, we know this is a lot. Break it down if need be. Watch it a few times, because if y'all are like me, it takes me multiple times to retain things, especially when I'm not very knowledgeable or it sounds foreign. If you don't understand a term, immediately hit that pause button and go look up that term, because then your brain just shut off. You're not going to retain the next information. So definitely do that. And we promise on the next one, we're going to keep it light, fluffy, giggling and bouncing back and forth. But we felt like this was so important, especially with everything going on, because again, when the world starts getting a little crazy, everybody panics. And then in turn, things go up. Things go up, but our paychecks don't go up. Just like John said, our paychecks maintain, but the cost of living goes up substantially. So we just really wanted to pass this along to you guys, and we hope that y'all found some amazing value in it, because it is so valuable. And you've been given some wonderful reference points from some true experts, to where we're able to at least share what we learned from them, even though we're not the experts in it. we just love being able to share this with you guys.
Definitely. And it's very, very important, of course, as Joe was saying, and if you guys are sitting there saying, well, yeah, my 401k is not going to cut it, my wages aren't going to cut it, then this is an opportunity for you to grow as a person. You can do this. It's not that difficult. It takes a little bit of time, and you got to break it down and you got to build it up. That is what we're talking about here. But I think, for me to round out the show, most importantly than anything else, I keep saying it, you guys have got to do the work. Okay, we can give you the information, we can give you all the tools, but you got to be willing to do the work. And that is going to be the difference between those that make it and those that don't, those that are financially secure and those that aren't. And no one's going to do the work for you. And, nor should you expect them to. As Rumi said, yesterday, I want to change the world, but today I'm wise, so I decided to change myself. Joe, have you got anything to add before we wrap up today's show?
You just knocked me backwards with that statement. I love that. I mean, I just almost, oh snap, that was awesome. I'm gonna write that down, and I'm gonna even go a little bit further on it, which it's not gonna be as powerful as what he just said, because that just rocked it. But instead of trying to surprise and impress everybody around you, why don't you focus on surprising and impressing yourself first?
I think that's really good.
Yes. So y'all do your research like John stresses, and he stresses it because it's so important. But realize just because you do so much research does not mean that mistakes or oopsies don't happen. So you have to be prepared to say it's okay, I learned from it, but don't be afraid to try again and then take a different course of action. Now, don't try the same method twice, but change that action. And I know that y'all are all going to be so successful, and it'll be wonderful.
Absolutely.
But definitely listen to the statement John just said, because that was huge.
Well, here's another one for you. You've got to prepare for the storm during the sunny times, because they are going to come. They are going to be there. And, it doesn't matter what you do. We have it. I have it. Joe has it. Everything is tidal. It goes in, it comes out, and you've got to be prepared more than anything else. But guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Really, really appreciate it as always. And if you would love to support the show, you can do on Patreon. You can click that link below. You can head there. We are working on the tiers right now to figure out what really awesome content that we can give you guys, what we can make it either monthly or weekly or whatever else. And we're exploring coaching, we're exploring all sorts of different things. If you've got suggestions, put them in the comment section below. As well as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend, because it could be the very thing that they need to hear in their hour of darkness and struggle. And you can come and visit us at thebattlesweallface.com if you are struggling yourself with your website, with your business, personal, family, youth, spiritual. You name it, you are coming to the right place, the home for basically where your fundamental needs are going to be met. And until next time, I want to thank you for watching, guys. Really hope this has been a benefit to you and a blessing to you. And take care, God bless, and we will see you same time, same place next week for more of the Battles We All Face. Take care.